Hello, I'm Lottie Unwin and welcome back to the Marketing Hustle Hot Takes. If you're new in these episodes, I've got James Hickson round for a cup of tea and a chat. James built Brand Hackers with me and we're giving ourselves the chance to talk about some stuff that we've been ruminating on. Today, we're going to dig into what we're taking away from the mega exit from Wild Deodorant. Can anyone imagine a £230 million deal? On the agenda is influencer, how they've done it and what we can learn from it, and whether creativity and performance are actually two separate things. Cool. We all know the struggle, spending time, budget and creativity on a campaign, only to wonder, will this actually land? Well, this is where Sticky Beak comes in. Sticky Beak is a game changer for consumer testing, which I'm so passionate about, helping you make your marketing more effective by getting real consumer feedback on your brands, campaigns and products quickly and affordably. So why Sticky Beak? You can get fast, reliable insights in 48 hours or less. Testing won't blow the budget. It costs hundreds, not thousands. You can reach your target audience globally. You can test everything from logos to taglines, messaging, creative, packaging, promotions, and more. And I really believe in marketing data-driven decisions, and you'll hear me wang on about the power of insights. So I'm very proud of this partnership. Visit stickybeak.co/marketing hustle to book a free 30-minute strategy call and discover how they can help. Plus, you get some free Sticky Beak credits to get you started, so well worth giving it a go. Okay, so news in recently that Wild has sold to Unilever for an absolutely astronomical £230 million. I think. It might even be dollars. The currency is irrelevant at this point.
Exactly. It's in the hundreds of millions.
It's loads of millions.
For a brand that's been going 6 years, it's like, I think I saw that and I gave a double take to the number and then sent it to 3 people and they all came back with like that emoji. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And we, I think from the rumour, and this could all be totally untrue, I think the deal's not yet signed. So I think it kind of went into public, the public sphere before. So when this goes out, who knows whether it'll have all collapsed or the ink will be dry on the paper and the founders will be off on their yachts. I don't know. But
and of course the context here is we're not saying, oh, that's crazy. It's not, we're not making any comment on the evaluation. Don't really care about that, to be honest. But for a brand, it's a really interesting story of a challenger brand though.
Yeah.
Within under 10 years getting to that valuation and how they kind of got there. That's what's really interesting and just quite...
For sure, and not that I'm claiming any expertise on how to value a business like Wild, but it doesn't sound mad. Their growth has been so incredible and their revenue numbers are so high that is what very sensible people have valued this business at, and they have done that so quickly. So we wanted to take some time to sort of think, well, what can little us learn from this magical story? I think for me, I'm not going to pretend that I'm emotionally engaged in this at all, or that Freddie and the Wild team are BFFs. But I kind of feel like I've seen it. Freddie came to the first ever Copy Club dinner when he was at HelloFresh as CMO, and I think HelloFresh was a wild time, a rocket internet-backed business, loads of founders, loads of pressure, so clearly was growing up in this very high-pressure environment. Then went off to do his own thing, and Wild was born. And what I find so fascinating about having watched that from afar, and we've interviewed Freddie a couple of times over the years, is that I think he knew what he was doing from day zero. This 230 million exit is not...
It's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise.
Yeah.
I think that's really manifested somewhere. And every single decision in that journey started from a goal like this. And I hope he's proud. I hope this is not a shortcoming of where he thought he was going to get to.
But it's that thing of when you go in and start the business, we've spoken about this before, but, be clear about what you want. What is the outcome you want? And then engineer to that outcome.
And the risk profile you're prepared to stomach, the workload, the sheer pace of growth, the amount they must have raised to do this, all of that, you've got to go in absolutely clear, 2 feet first on the level of commitment. He has also had a family during this time, so fair play.
Yeah, very impressive.
So we start with that goal, and then I think the way they thought about category, I find really inspiring. So Freddie's spoken to us about this before, but choosing an intentionally high margin category dominated by a few players. So there weren't loads of challenger brands in this space. There are now, but they had
Still
first.
only a few, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. They had first mover advantage into this space, and I think the margin point is so interesting.
So true. And I think that's one of the things that people sort of really don't think enough about. I get the impression, and I'm guilty of that too, is you're like, oh, it's all about, what's the size of the TAM and how much revenue can we make and all this kind of thing. And actually, if you're only making 5% on everything you sell, then kind of it's not a great business. But seeing a business like cosmetics, deodorant, perfumes, their margins are so great in all of those
cocktails.
businesses.
What moth?
That surprises me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought they'd be good margins.
I don't know about margin, but moth space in retail, in the words of Rob Wallace, who featured on a previous episode of The Marketing Hustle, the moth space is the most high-performing space in store because of the value per centimetre.
Wow.
And I think, again, that's like a different
Great
take.
claim.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's such a different take on this, but the opportunity to make money being really apparent.
Yeah.
You made a really interesting point when we were kind of catching up before this about seeing that Unilever, I wonder if Unilever were kind of pinned down as the exit strategy for this, like before the idea began, because P&G have a deodorant category.
Obviously Lynx have a big deodorant category. Unilever, sorry, Lynx is their big one. But in the States, there's a brand called Native Deodorant, which is sort of the precursor to Wild. I think Wild definitely took a lot of inspo from Wild, from Native, and they built this business, to around about 100 million, in sort of 3 or 4 years in the States, and then sold to P&G. And you've got to imagine Unilever are looking and going, we need one of those. We need a natural refill of a deodorant. We can't let P&G sort of eat that lunch. And I imagine, if you're looking at this category and you're going, okay, well, there's probably 3 players in this space. P&G have already got one, which they might bring over to the UK, maybe they won't. Let's look at what Unilever might be interested in, and also what, whoever else it might be, and then just try and focus in on that. Again, it's an interesting way to build a business. I'm not necessarily sure it's always the right way, but it seems like it was fairly, I reckon, if not targeted, certainly on their mind from day one.
Very punchy.
But I think the interesting around that category thing is, I think it's a guy called Eric Ryan, who's one of the founders of Method. He talks about this as very much like his playbook for when he launches products. So he'll kind of walk up and down the grocery aisles and say, where in these aisles are there products where there's no innovation, where there's kind of nothing interesting, everything looks the same, and it's been dominated by a few big players. And in his case, that was initially cleaning products. So he was like, we can bring good design, great smells, natural liquids. He then went on and did plasters, and then he went on and did vitamins, I think. And he was sort of very much approaching it from that perspective of where can I bring something interesting and different, still high margin products, and I think that's quite a nice way to approach it. And then you can kind of keep repeating that playbook. So I think this is kind of, what Freddie was saying when he was doing it, is like, we looked at the categories and we were like, deodorant is ripe for disruption. There's a few big players. No one really knows how to kind of come in and offer something different, and there's great margins. So let's play there. So yeah, that's an interesting.
This is a moment for me to shout out my future tinned fish empire.
Okay.
I am obsessed with the opportunity to innovate in tinned fish. That is just John West. Where is the challenger brand? I don't know anything about fish margins.
Well, the brand Fishwife in the US.
Yeah.
Which is doing that, I guess.
Yeah.
It's such an unsexy product.
Well, this is it. I did do a Sunday of research into this and just got too into large deep sea fishing and was like, this is not for me.
Right.
I'm tapping out at the slaughter.
And sort of a friend comes around and just like knocks on the door, like, whoa, it stinks of fish in here. Exactly. And you got 17 different tins of like different fish open. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the product, I can get on board with the high-end product tasting, but it was the like being involved in the slaughter of tuna at scale that really put me off it as a business plan. But I think there's a space.
Yeah, okay,
and I can go on a long tangent about that. And if you go to a Spanish supermarket, the variety of tinned fish versus the John West in the UK, and it's high in protein. Anyway, I've had lots of thinking about this, as you can tell. So, right product, right category, not fish. Then their focus on influencer, I think, is like another thing that we should really land on. And like, yes, performance marketing, huge. I'm not going to try and make claims as to like what was the most powerful channel. But I think the seriousness with which influencer was attacked,
yes,
and the scale of the team and the commitment to it as a channel, I find very inspiring.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that's it. They chose it as a channel, so this is going to be good, and then they really went at it. So I think, I've seen Freddie describe, we looked at influencer as a performance channel, which is so different to most brands who go, we should probably do a bit of influencer. We'll reach out in our DMs and we'll send a bit of stuff out, and hopefully they'll post about us and that kind of thing. So that stuff kind of is okay, and you'll get a few things, but actually being intentional about something, the amount of return you can get if you we always talk about this. Stuff doesn't get done unless you put someone or some focus on doing it.
Yeah. Influencer specifically, I think, is fascinating because there is probably a theory of a minimum threshold that you have to spend for it to be able to be optimized. And I've never seen this thought leadership.
Okay, yeah. Explain this to me in layman's terms.
Right. So if you're doing a bit of influencer and you've got 10 influencers, because we know that some influencers bomb and some do really well, and that it's a bit science, but it's a bit art, your ability to optimize that is quite limited.
Because you don't have enough of them.
Because there's not enough, exactly. Because you're kind of just throwing paint at different walls and seeing what sticks. And that's, yes, you can think about audience fit a bit and you can test it, but ultimately everyone who runs influencer at scale will say, we get endlessly surprised. Yeah. So you've got to be doing enough, placing enough bets. It's kind of like a VC model. You've got to be placing enough bets to have 2% of your
to find your unicorns
portfolio
almost, right? Yeah.
Have these outsized returns, and to offset what is going to be 30% of content that's dud. And so, I think there's probably some logic in, if you're not spending quite a significant chunk of change, then you're never going to get it to outperform other channels. Because what we hear all the time is, but influencers just not outperforming Meta. Everything's not outperforming Meta, so everything else just gets deprioritized.
So do you almost then get to the point where you're like, look, either do it properly or don't do it?
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering.
And maybe don't do it, but we're not saying definitely do it. It's not for every brand. And it's interesting because I think, certain categories probably work better than others. And I think beauty clearly works well, and those kind of beauty, perfumes, whatever it might be. And I guess deodorant fits into that beauty sort of category. So I think it made sense for them as that category. I think it also made sense for them because it's a product that needs a bit of explanation and a bit of social proof, because it's not just a normal deodorant everyone's used to, a spray or whatever it might be. It looks a bit different. It kind of needs a bit of explaining. So the influencers are sort of doing two jobs. One is building awareness, but also the other is education. So if your product needs a bit of education, I think influencer is a good one for that. But I'm
not sure that what I'm saying is what we should take from Wild is that no one should do influencer unless you're doing it at the scale of Wild.
No, not the scale of Wild. No, but not the scale of Wild. But you are kind of saying that there should be some scale, and scale means different things to different brands. But I mean,
but I think what I'm questioning is whether it doesn't mean different things to different brands. There is actually a minimum. But, and we would say the same if someone said to us, my Meta budget is £1 a day.
Yeah,
we'd say, don't worry about it. Yeah. We don't have the same language for
influencers.
If your influencer budget isn't 10 grand a month, then really there's not enough going into this to be able to optimize. And so they did that on steroids.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose one thing is, one thing in this influencer learning from them is, they kind of committed to it. They hired an in-house team, and that team might have been 2 people, I'm not sure, but they had people in-house dedicated.
It's huge.
Oh, it was much bigger than that. Yeah.
I don't know whether it started.
Yeah.
But it's I imagine like a floor of an office. It's a significant group of people.
Okay, so that's really interesting. And then I think they also then, so there's commit to it, but then it's make the influencer experience really great. So, everyone talks about, I've got this nice influencer box, but they definitely did. It wasn't an afterthought. It was, this is designed for influencers, and influencer is such a sort of silly term because that's making it sound really vapid, but designed to be shown and amplified on social media, something that you'd want to. So the box arrives and it looks incredible and it's sort of dressed up like a present, and then you open it. I saw this video. Each influencer had their own name etched on the case. And it's such nice little touches. Again, goes back to the point, you've got to invest in it because that's not cheap probably. It adds a bit of cost each time, but really, really worth it. So I think that making it actually worthwhile, making it something that people do actually want to talk about and want to be part of your program, which kind of leads on to this other thing is they didn't go chasing. They said, come to us, and not like in an arrogant way, but they're like, look, we're going to make it really simple about what we do. So they threw up a landing page, which was essentially, this is our influencer page. If you want to be, if you want to get basically paid to talk about us, then submit your details, and we'll get back to you. And the threshold, I think, was like 1,000 followers. So they were big into micro-influencers, which I think is a really good idea. And we'll also give you an affiliate cut. We won't pay you an upfront fee. That's not how we do influencers. So again, not necessarily one is right, one is wrong, but they were really clear. They were clear with what they do. And they're like, we don't pay upfront fees. So don't come to us and ask for 15 grand, but you can earn money from us. So it's that kind of affiliate model, which has become much more popular actually in the sort of with the advent of TikTok kicking off and TikTok Shop and stuff like that. I think when they were doing it sort of in 2019, it was a bit more kind of revolutionary.
I don't think we should assume that the affiliate content creator program, which is really nice, was instead of other influencer channels. Like, I wonder if there's just a maturity. We go influencer, like
it's one thing.
Just chuck it all in. And actually, what I suspect is going on is you go, okay, you've got affiliate content creators who are doing one job. You have paid partnerships with a select number of influencers that are creating social content that we're then promoting to their audiences, which is doing a different job. You then might have like an intentional strategy with influencers in other categories so that you're broadening your reach and building trust in a different way. Like, definitely they're doing this affiliate content creator thing, but I just think the level of maturity in how they're thinking about this channel just throws it's kind of, all of this just feels like it's just throwing so much shade on like the naivety with which so many other brands are approaching this stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's just like, for us even to suggest that we're like, influencer is inspiring is such a misleading view of how they're thinking about getting audiences sharing and talking about their product and building trust. Because you're right to say this needs education. Fundamentally, it's more expensive and it's such a different way of buying a product that's really commoditized. Like, I think we forget that this used to be mad, that you would spend way more on a refill thing that would then get posted to you, and the whole end product is way more expensive than just buying a number of like on offer and
for
boots.
Like £1.
Exactly. And within like a hot minute, less than 6 years, that's become completely normalised, and there's a whole category around refillables. But we need to kind of like celebrate. Step back and say, exactly. Step back and go, this is really different.
It'd be interesting. I mean, I wonder if that influencer was a big part of that, in terms of just just the wideness of the reach. Like, could you have done that if you just focused on performance or above the line? Maybe not.
I'm not going to pretend that I know enough about media mix modelling to answer that question, but I think building trust and the feeling of seeing this everywhere feels very powerful. Like, if you go back to marketing textbook stuff, it's like reach and frequency and the incremental effect of different touch points. I definitely think that will be paying out in dividends. Like, you see someone on their influencer feed, you then see a paid ad, you then see some good organic, you then start to see them in store, which is where like the channel strategy becomes so interesting. That all just builds this sense that when you do go and place your D2C order, you're buying into something that's like a really desirable product that's going to work. Although we did have a fun aside as to whether Wild actually works or whether it makes people smell. It's not for me. Right, our final takeout from this is kind of the power of creativity.
Yeah.
Which is quite inspiring in the context of a business that's been so ruthlessly commercial.
Yeah, exactly. Everything we've spoken about has been almost like clinical. It's like we're gonna hack this category. We're gonna nail this channel. We're gonna be very performance driven. And you might be forgiven for thinking this is a brand that doesn't really believe in creativity or doesn't sort of understand it, but actually a lot of their output's really good in terms of, is really kind of rooted in creativity. And I suppose there's a couple of things, that can manifest in one way, just in terms of the product itself. Looks really nice, is visually desirable. I know, it's sort of built for social media, but has, limited editions that kind of are built off this kind of creative sense and this design. It's almost the design led. And then you've also got then the ad creative or just creative that they've put out into the world, which is different. You know, they put humour into a lot of their adverts. And actually, I think that is quite typical of the category. If you look at Lynx or Old Spice, you know, humour is, for male deodorant more so than female deodorant, humour is a kind of a quick way to just get people to like your brand. Because I guess you can't smell the thing on TV, right? That's pretty what it comes back to.
Fair.
So with Wild, though, you know, we haven't talked about sustainability because I don't think it's kind of for us to talk about. But that's obviously, that's the core of their business. We're a sustainable product.
But it's not the core of their comms.
But it's not the core of their comms, but where they do introduce it, they do it in a way that's not earnest and boring. So they had this campaign where there's a polar bear lying in bed with a lady, and and they're talking about all these different kinks, and he's kind of like getting like ever more kinky, and then I think she mentions plastic deodorant, and he goes, "That's too far for me." And it's just a nice way to talk about their sustainability message, but in a funny way.
Yeah.
And I think they've got another couple of campaigns that sort of tap into something similar like that. I think, again, not an expensive campaign to make. I guess someone dressed up in a polar bear suit, and then all back to the creative idea of how can we get our point across? How can we show our point of difference? How can we actually, as you know, one of our ex-colleagues likes to say, put them in the dickhead box. So the way to put like, you know, Links in the dickhead box is to be like, your plastic is bad, man, you know? And we're going to show it in this kind of funny way. And like humour is the shortcut, always. It's really hard to do, but if a brand can do humour well, it's a shortcut to being memorable and being, you know, loved, I think. So I think they do that quite well. And I think, but I think that creativity is, you know, they've done activations and stunts. You know, they'll be out in Trafalgar Square. They did one where they were just giving away like loads of deodorant and doing sort of silly stuff with the founders, I think, quite early on. But having that kind of creativity at the core of the business, I think, has probably helped. Every business thinks they are creative. I don't think all of them are.
No. And performance is often seen as an antithesis to creativity. And this is such an interesting story of how those two things are completely interlinked. Because what creativity does in the case of Wild is deeply commercial. It's like standout, memorability, and therefore like cut through and loyalty.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, it's
do we have a sense of what's going to happen next?
Well, I mean, it's that classic thing of, you know, once they get bought, are they going to lose all their soul? And I think if we look at some brands that's happened to, you know, or not they've lost out, they've been bought, you know, Ben & Jerry's.
Yeah.
Good example.
Had a good chat about that.
They got bought and they didn't lose their soul. I would suggest the same with Innocent.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
No, but it's all in the details of the term sheet.
It's in the deal of the term sheet, and also I think in whether it's built into the business. Because let's say at some point the founders will move on. They'll do their earn out and then they'll move on.
Yeah.
So the question is it so embedded into the organisation that creativity is important, sustainability is important, all these good things? I suspect it will, because my kind of gut feel says that these big acquisitions are more and more being done with the view that these guys have done a pretty good job so far. Let's just leave them to it. We'll keep some guardrails on, but let's not go in there and completely like change things, because that would be mad. So for Unilever to suddenly just throw everything out wouldn't really make sense. So I think my gut would say that they've probably got another 5 years or so, 10 years.
The super interesting story I was told by the MD or CEO of Pucker Teas was that you can control the first exit, but you can't control the second.
So would the second exit be as in another acquirer comes in? Oh, right.
So,
God.
which I thought was so powerful.
Imagine you even got to that.
But you're long gone.
Yeah, of
so
course.
you can say, I'm selling it to the next person, and in that term sheet, these things are really important to me, and you control the terms of that deal.
Yeah.
But unless that says, and I will control the terms of all future transactions, when that gets then handed on for a third time, you have no ownership of that stake at that point. Which I thought just really struck with me, which is like,
and
how does the story for these brands end? Like we're not necessarily the end of the journey.
No, for sure. I'd never really thought of it like that. And I think if we assume that they're often founder-led businesses at the start, at some point that founder probably needs to kind of emotionally detach.
Yeah, Liz Earle has nothing to do with Liz Earle. I always think that's fascinating.
Really?
Yeah, it's just her face everywhere, but she's not her.
No.
So to summarise, I think we took 3 things away from that conversation that are all inspiring for a big brand, but also for us and all the brands we work with. The first is that if you want to get really, really rich, you've got to plan really far ahead.
Yeah.
That is true.
And that's the most important thing.
6 years minimum, and they're going to be a real ride. That is the most important thing. Then we talked about category and the importance of being really commercially stable. And I think that is so underestimated. And I can actually think of a few brands. I can think of a granola brand that I know has terrible margin, has been holding on for a long time. Fair play to them, but like, what is the end state? Like, how's that story going to end? The second is I've got a lot of thinking to do about how I'm going to I think maybe we should just ban the word influencer.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's like a completely unhelpful.
We're just going to rewrite
Like
everything influencer.
Yeah.
Give it a new name.
Just think it's a bit of a like damp towel over this whole load of much more interesting, intentional strategies that we are like not really talking about intelligently enough as an industry, inspired by Wild. And then the third thing is to take real inspiration from the difference between, like, to this false difference between performance and creativity. Like, they're not different. Creativity is inherently involved in performance because it moves those performance metrics. And Wild have a lot of examples of that.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Lots to learn.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoy our conversation, and we're so open to feedback about this stuff. Please do follow so that you can stay in touch with the marketing hustle and what's coming next. In the future, we're going to be exploring with more different formats. So I'm thinking about case studies with marketing directors. There's going to be some interviews with me, which I'm feeling weird about, but let's see how that goes. And I'll be getting more founders on for a chat. So please do stay in touch and you can be part of the ride.